Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for coming to Leaving Two Homes podcast. I am Kabina, as in the intro. Thank you so much for coming back. It's been a long time since I recorded. It's been a crazy year with the pandemic. Obviously, coronavirus has changed so much of our lives and everything that's going on. But I've had a unique path as well. So, um, since June, I've lost a job. Took a couple months to recalibrate. Spent a couple months interviewing and looking for work, and finally secured a job. And it's kind of interesting because we'll talk about that today. Today's theme and title is really all about becoming a professional. Um, and you can take that however you want. You can look at blue collar workers, whether it's plumbing, whether it's carpentry, whatever the job looks like. But I'm going to talk about it from more of just a professional engineer perspective and what that journey looked like and what I experienced, in my path when it comes to work. So, yeah, the pandemic really taught me a lesson in that in the corporate setting, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And, I got let go without a lot of fanfare. I got a message at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I was let go at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. And it was such a painful separation because I really pour my heart and soul into what I do. So I'm the kind of guy that, I start my days, whether it's 7, 8, 9 in the morning, and I work till sometimes 8, 9, 10 p.m. at night. And there's been days where I've been on the road at 4 in the morning and didn't get home till 11. Um, but I say that all to say I really pour myself into what I do, and it's a lesson that I learned from my dad and my mom, and it's something I keep with myself wherever I go. And so to be released without ceremony and without a lot of explanation, it really hurt and really cut deep. And I took a couple weeks just to hit the refresh button, and lucky for me, a really good friend of mine from engineering school decided to come visit me on the weekend that I got let go. We didn't know that was the case, but he happened to be here, and we had a great time. We got to sit under the stars and jump in the pool and connect, and it was a great off ramp from such a disappointing piece of news. Um, the other thing that really struck me in that time was when I got let go, it was so painful and hard to talk about, but I somehow was able to um, share my story with people that I thought would benefit from it. So I mentor a few engineering students, and I told them what happened to me. I was very transparent. I was like, this is what happened, this is how it happened, and I gave them all the backstory, which I won't get to too much. But I think it's important to share these not so good moments because it helps us overall in the journey, and it might help one of the other students as well. Um, I also shared the story on a call that I have with fellow engineers every once in a while, and it struck me how many people had experienced job loss in such a painful way. And it was like, man, we really need to be talking about these stories because that's how you really heal and move forward, and that's how we build community around our successes and our struggles. So this whole situation really taught me a lot about myself and about what people go through in life, but also as a black engineer, it was great to connect with fellow professionals as well on this journey. Um, so yeah, let's talk about becoming a professional and get into that. So in my perspective, that journey should be very organic, right? I think there is a way that becoming a professional happens without us even knowing. It's kind of like breathing, right? You're kind of going along, and all of a sudden you're entering this realm. And I really do think that the only person that knows when you're ready to become a professional is the individual going through that journey, right? And so there is obviously societal establishments of college education, of certain amount of work experience needed, and all that kind of stuff. But that's society's standards. I think becoming a professional is really an internal journey because it can happen at any age. I think of, they talk about these genius students that become scientists and find cures at 16. I mean, in their mind, they've been a scientist since probably, middle school, since 10 years old, 11 years old. who are we to tell them they're not professional, right? And I think professionalism really becomes you acknowledging and accepting the space you're entering, and just going at it full force. Um, for me, it happened in college, right? So I think the traditional way for me was, I was in college, I was having a lot of fun, not focusing on school, but eventually I got on the right track. So eventually I started taking school a little more seriously, um, and I started working on getting internships. And we'll talk about my internship journey a little bit later. But after those internships, I'll come back to campus, and it was like I was stepping into worlds. I was in a professional space, then I was back in academia. I was back in school, and I was like, oh my God, like it's crazy. I see what's happening in the building at work. I see how engineers work. I see how they interact with other people. It started becoming real in my head, right? So for me, becoming a professional became more real. Whereas like the last 2 years, 3 years of school, I started to see the shift inside of me of perspective. Like, oh wow, that's what an engineer does. That's what an engineer looks like. Because I didn't grow up in a family where I could see engineers. So for me, being able to visualize it and see what engineering looks like was like, wow, this is pretty awesome. And I saw that transition start to happen. And, I think that's when I really saw myself as a professional. Like the last 2 years of college, a lot of my friends were taking internships all over the place. We would share stories about our internships. And it was just like such a cool environment because it felt like things were building to us actually graduating. And now, I've been an engineer for next month will be 4 years. So it really happens, I think, at different stages. And I don't know what it would be like to be a child prodigy and see yourself as a scientist or a lawyer or an engineer at 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. But I assume that there's a level of like competence there where like as a kid, they start seeing themselves in these roles, whether they have a family member that can show them that, or they're invited to a university or job environment where they can be around that energy and see like, oh, so the distance between me and working is, this close. Like that I think that's really what professionalism um, looks like. Um, so let's get into like the journey to my professionalism, right? So I'll look at it as like the jobs I had. So I've had a lot of jobs. So moving here from Africa, my dad would work 3, 4 jobs to keep a home. It was me, my brother, and my dad. I remember one of our first meals in our first apartment. We sat on top of empty paint buckets and had dinner. Um, so my dad, worked as a dishwasher. He worked cleaning apartments. He worked in a whole host of jobs. And I remember going along and helping. Like, my dad would be like, hey, vacuum, or hey, clean that bathroom or whatever. And, as a middle schooler, after school, that's what we did. That's how we survived as immigrants in this country. Um, so those are like my first memories of work. And then I went into high school, and in Wisconsin, I think 14 and a half is when you can get a worker's permit. And so you have to get like a special form at school, and your parents have to sign, and it goes to the state, and you can work. And one of my close friends, who I'm actually going to talk to after this podcast, um, Max Johnson, hit me up, and he goes, hey man, we got this great job at a restaurant locally, Stam House. Do you want to come along? And we had another friend, Nick, that was working there, and he was like, hey, we need a bus boy. And the bus boy essentially walks around, picks up utensils and dirty plates, and goes in the back and helps the dishwasher clean the plates. And it was a really fun job. I mean, we wore white shirts and black pants, and you felt kind of nice. And there was that classic like restaurant like energy and culture. For those that worked in restaurants, you all know what that's like. And it was such a fun place. It was my first time making money too. It was my first time seeing money, and that was such a cool experience to work with your friends and also make money after a long day of school. Um, I also worked on a ranch in the summers. So a good friend of mine, once again, Chris, his parents adopted me unofficially. So obviously I had my dad and my mom who were very involved in my life. But I'm very fortunate to have a lot of families that adopted me. And one of them was Chris's family, my ranch family, I call them. And we're still really close to this day. And so I used to spend my summers there fixing fence line, riding horses, doing chores just for money. And it was great. I got paid like $10 an hour. It's like the most money I've ever seen. Um, and, I got a lot out of that time there. They helped me learn how to drive. They paid for my cell phone bill. They did a lot of things for me. So it was really like just chilling in the farm, eating fresh made bread, living the dream. It was really a good time. And then later in high school, I think it was like my sophomore year, my second year of high school or secondary school, as they say. I got a job as a grocery bagger. I think that was my next job. I don't know for sure, but yeah, I was bagging groceries, and it was like during wrestling season in the winter. And I remember my wrestling coach being upset that I had to leave practice early to go to work, and I actually got fired from that grocery store because I got a couple complaints, like 2 or 3 complaints about putting, like squishing somebody's bread. I think I may have put cans on top of their bread, and I got written up, and they let me go. But I got to focus on wrestling, which was awesome. I think my next job after that, which was kind of carried over from high school to college, was working at Cold Stone Creamery. So I worked at an ice cream shop, and it was a lot of fun. Once again, great high school job. Got to have great memories. Met one of my closest friends, Henry and Brizzy, there. Just a classic, like summertime, last couple years of high school. And actually, the owner owned a store right on the campus that I went to for college. So when I started at my university as a freshman, I reached out and he gave me a job. And it was like, did not expect that because I also messed around a lot when I was a kid. So messing around at work, he would see that on the company camera, and he still offered me a job. And I built kind of a crew, the Cold Stone crew, out of that. So I had some work friends when I went to school there. And that was a lot of fun. Great summer job. Helped me stay on campus even after freshman year ended. And I was able to pay rent and stuff like that. And it was really fun to work those shifts. I also picked up a job as a tour guide for my university. So I did that. I was a bouncer at bars. Worked all sorts of hours, coming home at 4 in the morning on the weekends and having to go to school on Monday. I worked as a karaoke DJ. What else? I had a whole lot of jobs, and I bring that all up to say that even when I got fired, like I got fired from my hotel job, I had a job at a front desk of a hotel in Milwaukee. Even getting fired was like lessons learned, right? I think everything that those jobs taught me, I wasn't really aware that I was learning, but it all added up. I mean, learning about how to deal with customers and how people travel for business behind the hotel desk, learning how to build teamwork and camaraderie and a culture at Cold Stone Creamery, learning to be the face of a brand as a tour guide at my university. Like, these are all things that I was learning about what work and professionalism was, and I wasn't even trying to do that, right? I wasn't like on purpose trying to learn these things. But all these jobs, I have to give them credit because they all offered me something in return, and something that to this day I probably use. I think my tour guide skills and being able to talk and I've always been able to talk my whole life. I love talking. I can talk to the wall behind me for hours. But I think being a tour guide and dealing with different parents and students and personality types and cultures helped me with my diction and my ability to speak and clarify my thoughts and be quick on my feet. Working at Cold Stone helped me build like natural bonds with my coworkers, and we would hang out after work and go to parties together. Working as a busboy, was just like learning about work, period. And when it comes to work, I would say also like my mom and dad are the hardest workers I've ever met. And I'm obviously biased for saying that. But at the same time, like my dad is the man that's going to outwork you. Like he'll get up at 2:30 every day for a year to get it done and make money and pay bills and take care of his family and responsibility. Like that's the kind of man he is. So like how many people do you know will wake up at 2:30 in the morning for like a week straight or a month straight or a year straight, all on 4 to 6 hours of sleep? My dad will do that, and he'll work 18 hours, 12 hours, whatever. My mom is also like just tenacious. Like, as kids, she went back and got educated and, retrained herself and just got after it. And I think when you have such clear examples of hard work in front of you, like every day I wake up, I don't even think about it. And I think of stories from my great-grandmother, my mom's grandmother, and her going to the farm every day, cooking a bunch of food to sell in the morning to feed her kids and send them off to school. Like that stuff is like inspiration to me, because you have to think like I'm only 4 generations removed from the village, right? Like my great grandmother worked and lived and raised over 10 kids in the village. Like I get to live in Connecticut in a heated house, with a nice car, with a nice job, with the 401k retirement benefits. Like I'm so motivated from her story. And even like um, my great grandmother is like, she's the background on my work phone. Like every time when I wake up and I'm about to go on a meeting, like that's the first thing I think of. So for me, like the culture of excellence and work and how I take professionalism, it comes from way before me. You know, it's literally generations of people before me that put the work in for me to be sitting here today. So I owe everything to them. Um, but yeah, moving into like my professional, quote unquote, professional resume, you know, I've had a lot of great opportunities, and you know, starting off with an internship with the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. I got to be an intern there for 7 months, and it's crazy because that was like my first professional environment. I mean, I have family members, extended family members that worked in professional spaces, but I didn't have any really close family members that worked professionally. So I didn't have those stories and moments um, about what it was like to work and what it was like to be in those spaces. Um, Lucky for me, being from a wealthy town in Wisconsin, like I sat at dinner tables with people's parents who were working in banks, working at credit unions, working in insurance buildings, right? And you hear those stories of traveling and all that. I got secondhand, you know, education about what it was like to be a professional. So I think being around that really helps you. And I think AEM was the first place I learned like, oh, I'm in an air conditioned office and people wear suits, and oh, I got to bring my A game. Like I can't come in hungover from like a party or whatever. Um, then I went on to Kohler Company in 2014 May, and I was there till January the next year. So I was there for 9 months, and that was in Kohler, Wisconsin. That was like the biggest company I've ever worked for, privately owned, well-known brand. Learned so much in that space, so much about, you know, what I wanted about professionalism, what I didn't want about professionalism, like how to network in your company because it's important to know people in different departments to get stuff done. You know, how do you connect with a guy in test lab or an incoming inspection person, or assembly line worker, or my own teammates, or new product engineers, or the secretary, right? And I'll say right now, the secretary or the admin person who works in this building for any company professionally, especially in corporate settings, is the single most important person in the building. I remember a story at Kohler where the lady that was the admin for the VP would have to set up for meetings and tear down for meetings and do a lot of background stuff, a lot of unsung hero things. And she came up to me as an intern and she was like, "Hey, Kubina, can you help me set up chairs for a room?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll help put together chairs," and helped her put the chairs in a room. And then she was like, "Hey, you know, it's crazy because I've had interns in the past that I've asked to help put chairs in a room, and they're like, I'm not here to do that." Like they literally thought they were above the task of helping put chairs in a room. I'm not saying that that's what they were hired to do, but I look at when I walk in a room like or a company, I'm part of the team. So if the team needs me to help out in any kind of way that makes sense, I do it and I move on with my life. Right? Helping with those chairs did not ruin my day. And then she came back later on after the meeting was done and she said, "Hey, can you help me tear down and put the chairs back where they belong?" I did, expecting nothing, thinking nothing of it. She later called me to her desk. She gave me like a mug. She gave me like a bunch of polos and like a bunch of swag items that nobody else had. And I was just like, wow, okay, this is pretty cool. So, you know, I set out to say like treat everybody from the janitor cleaning the bathrooms all the way up to CEO or owner the same. And that's how my parents raised me. Like everybody's the same in God's eyes, and we treat everybody with respect. But moving on, then after Kohler, Harley Davidson wanted me, right? And so I think once you get the first couple internships under your belt, other companies see the names and they're like, "Oh, what did he do there? Like I want him now." So Harley gave me 11 months in Menominee Falls, and that was just life changing. I got access to a bunch of stuff due to the program I came in. So I applied to a program on campus, and at the time, my girlfriend really encouraged me to apply. And honestly, she helped me do 90% of the application because I didn't want to apply. Like at that moment, I was like, I'm at Kohler, I'm making money, I'm killing it. Why would I care about the next thing, right? And she had such a vision of like us as a couple making it through college and starting life together. And I saw that too. But she really had my back. And she knew like that would come to an end. Um, and so she actually like encouraged me and helped me fill out and edit my application for Harley Davidson. And that's kind of how I got it. So using campus programs and the people in your support system to make it happen. And I got 11 grade months at Harley. I mean, the orientation was like the coolest thing I've ever been a part of. It was like 3 straight days of seeing all the motorcycles and having senior leadership talk to us and connect like on a human level, and a lot of good food, a lot of good music. It was amazing. So after Harley, everything changed for me. I think once you got Harley Davidson on your resume, now people are really looking and interested. Um, so I went on to Joy Global, which is now Komatsu Mining. Interned there for a few months, and actually at Harley Davidson, I got let go unceremoniously. And once again, I hit a low, but I learned what it was like to get fired from a major company. Um, but I can get into that in another podcast if needed. Um, then I went to Komatsu, like I said, and then I graduated. And at that point, that was like it was fall of 2016, so October, November 2016. And when I say I was desperate, I was desperate. Like I was at a point where like I was burnt out from school, was ready to graduate, needed a job badly to pay my loans that I had taken for school, and felt like my back was against the wall. And once again, my support system kicked in. Two of my friends, DJ and Grace, definitely stepped up and were like, hey, why don't you come check out a meeting of Society of Women Engineers? And I was like, well, I'm an engineer, but I'm not a woman, so why would I go to the Society of Women Engineers? And they're like, oh, just come anyways. It's a lot of fun, and you'll get to hang out with us. Like, I was sold. So I went to a meeting, had some pizza. Free food on campus is amazing. So I had some pizza, and then the rest was history. Like, I went to the national convention that fall with the girls. It was like 12 girls and me. And it was like the most fun I've had. Like, we had an Airbnb. We went to all these interviews. I got a chance to interview with Nike there. And then Nike had me for a video interview after that. And then they flew me to Nike World Headquarters, which was crazy for me. Like, you have to think, I'm a kid from Ghana who played soccer and followed, like, Ronaldinho, one of the greatest soccer players of all times, and, like, loved Nike. And here I am on the world campus, and I'm telling you, it was like the most surreal moment in my life. And I think that's when really I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be an engineer. Like, it's already happened. I didn't need a college graduation to make me feel valid at that point. And walking to that campus, I was so humbled, like, to think, like, Tiger Woods has walked through there, Serena Williams, Mbappe, Neymar, LeBron James, of course. I actually have a picture in front of LeBron James' a picture on the Nike campus, and they gave me like $180 to spend like the Nike employee shop, and I got some great stuff that I still have to this day. And it was just a life-changing moment. It felt like a lot of those long days, long nights, all the jobs I've ever had before that, all the stress in college was finally worth it. And it just felt amazing. And I was that close to getting the Nike job. I actually made the final three and did not get the offer. But one of the other people who I was going up against had a master's in engineering. I only had an undergrad. And so I was like, wow, that's such a powerful space to be in. So Johnson Controls was the other offer I had. And actually a friend recommended me to his boss, and I got a call, and they brought me in for a couple of different options. One of the options they declined me for, and then that boss made an offer. And it was like, you know what, I'm happy. I'll take anything at this point. Give me a job. Let me start my life. And I took a $60,000 a year offer out of college. And then it was official. Then I had like 2 weeks where I should have probably traveled. I should have probably gone to relax and refresh, but I needed money. So I started as soon as possible out of the gates. And started my profession. And so now I'm another company other than Johnson Controls. But I mean, I set out to say, like, it's been quite the journey. And I think really after, in 2014, 2013, after my first two internships, I felt like, all right, this is kind of kicking in. And that's kind of what the professionalism kicked off. So I would say, like, my resume sounds and looks much more impressive than I feel about it. I think I always like to stay humble and have the work ethic, um, and just stay regal and composed through all the triumphs and losses. So, I don't feel like my resume looks, if that makes sense. Um, for me, like, especially as an engineer, like, having internships is everything. And when I coach, current engineers in school, like, I'm like, hey guys, take whatever internship. Anything on your resume helps the next company look at you even more and helps you build that competence. And so the internships kind of made me look huge. And I think back on Nike, like, just Nike in Philadelphia, and like having $0 in my bank and like pulling out the last like $150 I had to buy that plane ticket. My friends DJ and Grace put me up, and bought me drinks and bought me food, and it was like a Hail Mary. It was like, we need a job and let's go. I think I applied to like 70 plus companies and only got one offer. And so it was such a pivotal time in my whole story. Um, and speaking of pivotal, like, obviously there are moments where we feel down and we feel out, and that's only natural. And my thing that I did to survive those periods was obviously like cry and hate my life and kind of be stuck in a spiral. But I felt like there was positivity and relief when I gave back. So anytime that I decided to give back my time and help out somebody else, that's how I healed. So I think about like my time with the YMCA Inner City Teen Achiever program. Um, that was time well spent talking to these students and helping them make the leap to college or whatever professional pursuits they wanted to do. Coaching soccer while I was at Kohler, I coached soccer for a season. I can't wait to get back. So much fun to teach the love of the game and connect with those young guys. I think back to being an aide for Girl Scouts and helping out, teach those girls math and help them do their homework. I think back to First Lego League, which is like a Lego league to teach engineering and math and science to little ones. I think that's kind of where I feel like the healing comes when you're out of hope. So, anytime I'm low, that's what I try to do. I try to find ways to give back. Um, and, as a professional now, I'm part of a lot of memberships. I'm part of Society of Women Engineers professionally, part of National Society of Black Engineers, and part of ASHRAE, which is a air conditioning professional group. So any way to connect and keep building that network is kind of what I do. Um, but back to feeling lost and feeling low, I mean, I think that's only natural when you're entering new spaces and new environments. Um, and I think as young people and as people in general, like every year you're alive, you're discovering something new. And that newness is going to have a feeling of anxiety attached to it because you've never been in this space before. You've never felt these things before. And it can either be a great adventure or a daunting future. And they are literally two sides of the same coin. Like, yeah, you can look out into what's to come and think, oh my God, like, I can't even imagine, like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? And start, like, spiraling and get into this dark space. Or I can look at it and say, like, let's go. Like, I'm excited. Like, who knew? If you could look back at 2013 and look back at myself and be like, you're going to work for Kohler, you're going to work for Harley Davidson, you're going to work for Komatsu Mining, you're going to work for John's Controls, you're going to work for another huge company currently, I would have been like, no freaking way. I would have never believed you. But you know what? That's the level of possibility for my future. Who knows what I have to come next? And it's like, just take it one day at a time, keep our head down, stay hungry, work hard. And I'm stealing a little bit from some of my motivational speakers, but that's kind of how I live. And a huge piece of advice I learned regarding professionalism is like, lean on our peers, like the people to the right and left of us in school, in our work, at our age group. That's who we're gonna be going through life with. When we have kids, when we get married, when we have promotions at work, when we switch companies, that's your biggest resource group. And I think, growing up, there was a lot of emphasis on like meeting a manager who could hire you, meeting a professor, or meeting a CEO. Like those are all great people, but they can typically see when they're being used or being talked to just for the goal of getting a job. And I think it's so important to take advantage of our lateral peer group because that's a group that as you go through life, you get down. Like when I lost my job in June 2020, it was 3 strong female engineers that came around me and said, hey, what can we do? Can we help you, look over your resume, your CV, make it a little bit better? This is jobs that we know of. Apply for them. If you want to do, sample interviews, we can prep you and get you ready. And there were also emotional support, like, hey, you're low, you need somebody to talk to, call me. So, I think it's important to lean on our peers and be there for others as they are there for us. Um, so I think perspective is what keeps me level-headed professionally. I think when it comes to professionalism, like, having a perspective of what I've been through in the past and my legacy and my heritage of my family, like, I am the great grandson of a woman that raised and loved on her kids in the village. And fast forward, I'm here in corporate America, making my way. And also knowing that, like, someday I'm going to be at a retirement party. Like, I'm going to look around to the left and right, and they're going to be singing songs, and I'm going to be looking at my retirement plan and being like, man, this is it. Like, this career is over. And so understanding that, like, everything will pass and has its moment, and just kind of enjoying the ride. So with so much love and so much light, thank you so much for checking in today with me, and take it easy. It was great to see you guys.